Mecha Break Open Beta has officially launched. I'm gonna go over all of the mech abilities, what they do, their best use cases, some of their hidden talents and tricks, cover all the details there with that, how to get into the open beta, as well as some additional unlock cosmetics, where we will cover all 13 mechs, and a whole bunch more. What's up, world? It's Utopia back here with another video. Today we're checking out all things Mecha Break. Mecha Break is actually available right now to download and in open beta. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. But before we do so, in case you want to know how to enter the open beta, head to my link in the description or in a pinned comment down below. You head down here, download the demo, which is actually the open beta. And if you want a free reward, you can actually get additional customizations if you do add it to your wishlist, so you can do so as well. And you can jump in right now. Now let's jump into the actual classes and mechs. Next up here we have the Inferno class, which is a ultra heavy attack. Yes, he is very slow, but he has some pretty cool unique abilities here. So you'll see that he actually has two of the same weapons. Why is this? So essentially he has a shotgun weapon, but they are both the same. Both his left and his right click are shotgun weapons. Now these will actually do significant damage if you are up close, where you can see this here. He'll do a lot of shield damage, more so than HP damage. So these are really good for breaking shields, especially on other mechs that do have high shield cases. But not only that, he does have a third weapon here that you might not exactly see. As you see right now, we only have the two on the screen, so where is his third main weapon? Well, it's actually if you hold both your triggers or left and right click down, you will actually charge up this singular shot here. Once it is fully charged, you can then unleash it all the way, and this actually does a decent amount of HP. Now, unfortunately, as you see, you will not be able to actually shoot this beam out unless you fully charge it, but as soon as it reaches that, you can fully shoot that out there. There are additional abilities here with that, so he doesn't just have that. He also has two sets of beams here, one being an AoE and one being a single target damage. So you'll see the first one here, or what's on my one key at the top left, or top right here rather. It is actually just an AoE ability. Now you'll see it kind of does sparks all around. You cannot control where that is going to go, but it does a nice little AoE damage. However, he actually has something of the same here, where it does full single target damage. You'll see that I can just use this ability and can attack, and it does a lot of damage, especially once their shield is ripped away. This does a ton of damage on the single target overall, but he also has one last ability here, which is his booster kit. Now the boost will do energy and fluid armor regeneration while granting immunity to stagger. So you can activate this and deactivate this to reduce the cooldown. It also creates an optical illusion during it dashes. So you'll see we have some cool stuff here. It does actually kind of hide our presence here when we're shifting back and forth or dashing back and forth, depending if you're using a controller. So that is really nice there. It's also going to do some regeneration with both your health and armor, and it will help you avoid staggering, because you can get staggered in a few use cases. Also with this beam here on the number 2 key, our single target beam, just to kind of show you, it does actually lock on there, but it also will kind of warp back and forth as we use it. You can see there, so it does have a nice auto attack there. You don't have to be perfectly accurate. It will actually lock on for you. That's where you do have to be careful depending on who you want to lock on. You can also check out all the stats here. We'll go through these very fast. We do, of course, have the max HP for this one, for the Inferno, at 44,000. You'll see a few of these. Again, max energy at 46,000, fluid armor 55,000. So a pretty tanky ability here as I go through and scroll through all of these. Next up here we have the Panther, who is a medium brawler. Now this is a primarily and basically only melee class, so you do not have really any ranged attack, although you will see you do have at least somewhat of a ranged abilities, but those are primarily dealing with melee. So first up here we do have a few different systems that tie into this one overall. So you'll see here currently we do have a shield on our right click, and that is essentially going to allow us to block attacks. We can also get some staggers with this too, so we can trigger a stagger, which means that the enemy will not be able to move properly, and they will be adjusted there. We also, right now, as you see, I have our number 3 on, which is actually another shield here that will block attacks from all directions, even from our backside and our front side. When we deactivate that, it has a very short cooldown, but when it's in use, it will have a little bit of a longer cooldown when it does actually get depleted. So this will get depleted after a certain amount of attacks, but it basically will block all attacks from all directions, making you not take any damage. You also do have another ability here, which will allow you to shield regen and energy regen. So when we use a lot of our energy, which you will see will get depleted fairly quickly, we can actually regen that very, very quick. And we get the shield regeneration. Decent ability here that we can utilize and get our attacks up very quickly. Now, other than our shield, right, we do have a melee attack. Now, this will actually lunge us forward, and as you can see, we'll do some decent damage, and will lunge us forward depending on how far we click it. So you can actually hold this one down, and we can get to the first section here, which will get a decent dash size. When we go all the way to the max, we will get a much larger charge here. The other cool thing about this ability is when we do have this and we do charge it up all the way, we actually will get a really, really good melee stagger here and damage. You see, it actually does trigger basically decent, I guess you would call it damage over time. Not really, right? We're just doing consistent damage with it, but it does trigger multiple hits across the way while we are staggering them backward. We also do have another ability or another melee weapon here, which is another slash ability. So you'll see we actually do some slash damage here. Now you can get this one to actually be an auto attack here. You kind of see where we can do 3 slashes. It will lunge us forward nearly every time. In fact, if you just click it, it's going to use our energy, right? So we're going to be using that the whole time here. So we can actually catch up to this Falcon. If we just click our ability once, we're going to lunge all the way through to them, and then we can take them down. Now we can also hold it down, and that will let us do our 3 attacks there. They do all do seemingly the same damage when they do attack. So you'll see here when we do our 3 hit combo, they do essentially do each of the same trigger mechanic or the same damage to the enemy. And we'll go ahead and check out the animation here for the assassination if you want. Really, really cool there. Another decent mech, especially if you are into melee. Next up here, we do have Panthers. As you see, they have 38,000 HP. Not too bad there. 35,000 energy and 32,000 fluid armor. They also do have a decent amount of stats here you can check out as well for their weapons, as well as their firing control system and stability. Next up here, we have the Stego, who is an ultra heavy attacker. Yes, this one is an ultra heavy, but it also is attacker, although it is very slow, and you'll see how that works here. So we do have their abilities on screen here, where we do have their main ability or their main weapon being a normal rocket, or essentially what looks like to be a rocket launcher here. Now you will see we do have ammo charges here that we will actually need to replenish. This one doesn't actually replenish automatically, and you'll see we'll test out some of the damage with it here, but it will replenish once we use all of that. So then it will replenish the entire ammo capacity, and it will give you up to 10. So normally a lot of ammo when you do shoot it will actually replenish for you. This one does not, although you can automatically replenish if you do reload automatically with your R key or whatever it is on your controller. Next up here, we do have a missile launcher on our right click, more than likely the left trigger. This is going to launch a barrage of missiles here. This one will have an 8-second cooldown timer and does some decent damage to our target here. You see it does lock on, of course, and does a ton of shield damage. No health damage, though. So this is just to take out the armor or the fluid armor off an enemy. That way you can access their HP. Next up here, we do have a little bit of a fluid armor regen, but it looks like a gas field ability. It's on our 1 key here, and it will have a 20-second recharge. That's going to allow us to regenerate our armor, which is not too bad and quite decent. Last up here, we do have 2 items, but they go together. You'll see we have something, basically what is called a fortress. We cannot move during this when we have the fortress set up. We cannot use any of our keys to move around. We can look around, but we cannot move around. We can also not go past basically what looks like a 90-degree angle here, or maybe even 45-degree angle. Yeah, 45-degree angle. So we can't really look past this point here. We're kind of locked in here. Now, you'll see that we cannot use our 3 key. And as the game says, we need a target required. So we do have to be locked onto something to actually get the barrage, and then you'll see that will highlight. Now we can utilize this ability, and it will do significant damage. Now it also does kind of launch things back. It looks like in a range here from where we are on the target. We'll get a little bit closer to see if that does any better, but more than likely this is going to be an ability that you'll use kind of in an area. As you see, it does actually miss even though we're locked in, and no matter where we aim on the screen, it's going to actually miss. And so you're going to have to use this one kind of sparingly, at least in certain areas, as it will not have a lockdown ability here, but you can have this little fortress ability set up. When this is more than likely taken down, it will go on a cooldown when it is locked out, but it doesn't have a cooldown, or at least only a 1-second one to kind of reset up. So in case you need to reset up somewhere, you can do that very quickly. This mech can still fly, but as you see, it will use a lot of energy to do so, and it is very slow. Now this one does not have a elimination animation or an assassination there. As you see, we don't really have that, so you cannot utilize that tech on this mech. Checking out some of the stats here, you do see we actually have lower fluid armor than some of the classes, and of course the lower energy, but the max HP is 90,000. And we can also regenerate our fluid armor very quickly with that aura there that we had, and it will also reduce energy damage and disrupt enemy units, but it enhances your fluid armor and friendly enemies friendly units rather within range, so they will also become untargetable by enemies. Help you there, get some shield regeneration, as well as reducing energy damage and essentially make you untargetable. So essentially they cannot lock onto you, they have to manually target that. You can also deactivate it early for a reduced cooldown. Next up here we have the Skyraider. Is a medium attacker, and this one has some very unique properties to it. We'll check out that in a second here. And of course we have the ability screen here. You can check out all these if you like, but I'll go over them now. So our main attack, we actually can just shoot, and it is just a normal attack, but we can also charge it up for some extra damage, and which will allow us to shoot out a beam. So it will be a lot farther when we actually do target that. You see we do still hit from here, but we do a decent amount of shield damage. However, if we charge up an ability, we actually do some HP damage in combination with shield damage and armor damage. So a decent one there. Our secondary attack is a missile lock-on ability here, which does insane amounts of AoE damage and basically rips off their entire fluid armor ability here, or their armor. It actually does a lot and can do significant HP damage once their armor is completely off. So a decent ability here, some decent attack rates, and we also have a nice charge attack, which can essentially do a ton of damage to our enemies. Another ability here can actually lock up onto 6 enemies. Really cool here. We actually deploy this out, and it will essentially put a smoke screen in front of enemies, making you hard to target and also reducing some damage there. Again, this can go onto 6 different enemies if they are on your screen or locked in. It will actually lock onto them and can do some damage reduction there, as well as kind of skew their field of vision, and it will greatly reduce energy damage. So really, really significant there. That does some decent help on utility. Another really cool ability here, and this one is quite unique for this, is that you can actually fly around using your 2 key, and essentially it's basically a jet. Now you can slow it down with your S key or speed it up with your W key. However, when you do slow it down or speed it up, you actually have a slower turn radius, what it at least feels like. But you see our energy rate is basically not really utilized. And so we have a ton of energy that we can use here. We can then slow ourselves down and lock on a target, and then we can use our 3 ability and do a barrage missile attack that will lock on to our enemy and does a nice decent amount there. We also do have a shift key here, which will allow us to dodge around. Now you cannot target this. It does the exact same move. There is no way to kind of channel that a different way unless you do right and left, but they do the same spin move every single time. You'll see that this class also does not have an elimination ability or an animation. We also have these Skyraider stats here: 38,000 HP, 42,000 energy, and 31,000 fluid armor. They have a decent amount of energy rate here and max energy, but their fluid armor and HP are significantly nerfed compared to some of the ultra heavy attackers. They also have some decent mobility here and their firing control system as well as stability. Next up here we have Aquila, which is a heavy sniper class. Now, they still have some decent stuff in their kit here, allowing them both close range and long range, as well as some really unique properties and utilities and utilizations. So of course, we do have the sniper rifle. However, it is a close range ability where you can actually just shoot it. Now, you see it's not just close range, it does decently far off damage. We can shoot this one pretty far as long as you can lock onto the target, or realistically you can shoot it anywhere and it will go pretty far into the range here. Now we can also scope in just like we did with the sniper, and it will lock on, so you really don't have to be precise here as long as they're in this circle, and we will do significant damage here. Now this one does reload on its own, so there is no utilization of reloading it yourself. As you see, it will tick up the ammo count instead. They also have a really cool ability here, and it's very unique to their kit, which is essentially allowing you to block an enemy regen. You can also immobilize them, so that's gonna block their regen of their energy, so they won't be able to move, and it immobilizes them. Super cool there. Now it allows you up to 3. If you do miss all of them, or if they do miss on the target, it actually will halve the cooldown, so it essentially is not going to be as long as it normally is. That cooldown will be significantly shorter, or at least halved. We also have another really fun ability here, which is called a mobility kit. Now that's what that bar is on the right side of the energy, essentially allowing you to have 2 bars of energy here, which we'll utilize from that second bar instead of it going into your main bar. So you have a ton of mobility here that you can utilize here, which is really cool. That will allow you to have a second energy kit, allowing you to really move around when you need to, evading the enemy. Now another very unique ability to their class is, just like the last one, we are able to lock onto 6 targets. This ability, our number 3 ability, will essentially allow us to lock onto 6 targets, but it will also help us increase our range as well as reload your main weapon. So we can get some targeted down there, then will also help us reload our weapon incredibly fast and help us lock on some enemies here, and so we can get increased range for accuracy purposes. As you see here, it will lock on much farther, and we won't need to be in this little circle here. It will basically be our entire screen. So really cool there. This kit is super cool for a sniper rifle. We actually do have an end animation here. You have to be quite far in order for it to activate, because obviously it is a sniper rifle, so you can't just be up close in melee range. You have to be significantly far for it to be, or give that assassination animation. Again, we have their stats here, which max HP, significantly lower than some, but they actually have a decent max energy for their mobility and a decent amount of fluid armor for their class. You can also check out their mobility stats here, as well as their fire control system and stability. Next up here we have Pinaka, which is a medium supporter, and yes, it is our first healer class. So this has rapid repair kit, we have the splitter, they have some damaging abilities and repair drones, as well as some really cool mechanics with their abilities here. You'll check those out. So why do I have a teammate in front of us? Obviously because we're a healer, and one of our abilities you literally cannot use unless you are targeted at something. So you see they can heal, and they essentially have to warp to a teammate here in order to heal them. So some decent healing there, but you will need to warp to them in order to do so. You also do have an ability here, or a damage ability. It is an AoE attack. I will show the damage in a second here, but we'll go over some of their other abilities, which is a drone here. Should be able to heal both you and a teammate. So that's cool there. You can actually have a little bit of a range heal as well, just by popping a drone onto them. They also do have some cover utilization here, so if you wanted to protect your teammate, you can by placing down cover in front of them, and you can get some cover here so that they can get blocked, and these will actually just act as cover. And it looks like they can be hit here, but I don't believe they can be taken down. I think these are kind of almost permanent, or at least as long as you have only 3 down. I think once you utilize all 3, and yeah, once we put down all 3, it will respawn the other one, and so those will go away eventually. Last up here is our healing ability that actually will heal both of our allies and ourselves again. This is a very strong one. You can place on a teammate, or you can place on yourself. You can retract that very easily, and then we can also just place it on ourselves. Very cool there. So it is a ranged ability here, and you see, depending on when we actually stop the ability or when we take it off, is depending on how long the cooldown will go away. So you see here, it's very quick, but it actually will heal our teammates there. It'll also block all attacks and staggers, immobilizations, etc. So it's decent there. Will help a ton to heal your teammates. So that is a nice one there to also give healing and block damage. Now, even though they're a healer, they still do some damage. As you see, they do a little bit of AoE damage. It is very light though, and they are mostly just poking ability. They in fact can't even do any damage to their HP until they clear up their shield. So unlike some of the other abilities, but you can spam it here quite fast and will do a decent amount of damage, but of course they do not have any animation for their assassination. You can also check out their stats here. Their max HP 37,000, max energy 37,000. Their fluid armor though is very low at 24,000, so they are a glass cannon. They also do have their mobility here, their fire control system, weapon, and stability. Next up here we have Hurricane, the ultra heavy defender, and you'll see he does have some very unique mechanics for his class that allow him to be a defender. So of course we do have their main weapon here. Now their main weapon on this one actually does have some unique properties to it, where we can shoot and do AoE damage, and as you see there, we'll just do a little bit of AoE damage with energy. However, if we hold it down all the way and get it to fully charge, once it is shot, it will then do continuous area effect damage. So it will have some AoE properties. Now I've noticed even if you charge it not all the way, you still will not get the AoE damage. It has to be fully charged in order for that to happen. Next up here, our secondary attack will actually deploy a little bit of a shield, and also on ourselves. We can hold this down to have the shield up, but it will also put out a shield in front of us. Now, enemies will actually target this instead of you a lot of times, and it will also block attacks depending if you're near it, so you kind of want to stay close to it. I've noticed people when they play, they actually kind of play too far out, and it doesn't actually block. They can target you here, so you want to play closer to these, as this will block their attacks, and they will target this instead of you. So it's very utilized there, a nice defense there, and can do some decent protection for you. First up here, we do have another ability that is like some other classes or we've seen before, where it actually does a shield around us, but in this case we have a nice shield that is decently large, but we can also exit out of it. We can kind of warp through it there, and depending on when you take it away is depending on the cooldown usually, and if it does get deployed all the way, we'll have a much longer cooldown. You also have two other abilities here, so not just those for attack. You will have a decent attack here, which is actually a laser, which we've seen in other classes. Again, doing some decent damage. Will only take down a fluid armor though, and will not do HP until that is completely gone. Next up here though, we do actually have a turret. That's what makes him really good at defense, is that the turret system will actually do some damage here. And you see that it will, again, not penetrate HP, but it will do some decent damage. And you can deploy 3 of them, so if you, in the case you do have 3 of them, you can actually do some significant damage when you do have a bunch of them out and utilized, and also your AoE damage. You can actually take down targets decently so. This class does not have any animations there with its assassination. Of the Hurricane's stats, max HP is pretty decent, energy is up there at 46,000, although they do move around quite slow, and their fluid armor up there at 48,000, so some decent survivability for this class. We also have some okay mobility, not the best there again, fire control system, weapon, and stability stats. Next up here we have Luminae. This is by far probably the most interesting class in this game so far. It is very, very cool in its mechanics. We basically have 8 abilities here, and I'll explain why in a second. This is actually a healer class, which is a light supporter. However, it has a mode, basically repair mode and attack mode, so it will have some really cool dynamics here, and essentially everything it does in the healing mode, it will do the exact same thing to the enemy in its attack mode. But even cooler than that, it actually avoids the shield on the enemy target entirely here. So you'll see for our main ability, we actually deploy a drone. This is usually going to heal allies. This will actually damage enemies instead. And as you see, it avoids their shield entirely. It just goes right through and takes out their health. You can also do a right click, which again does damage and also deploys another drone on top of them and will do HP damage. So you basically have 2 of your drones here doing damage at the exact same time. You can have more than 1 on a target. So you see we can have 2 here on the target. Now you have to be wary, of course, you do have to use these for healing. And the other one, your right click actually does have a cooldown, while your left click is much faster than your right click. You will have to obviously keep track of your drones here, as you kind of do need these for healing, or at least will need these for healing mostly. And when you switch back and forth, you will actually be limited there on how many you have. So even if you use them in attack mode, you will still have to make sure you have enough to heal. We also do have 2 more abilities here. This one will actually do an AoE damage, and instead this will actually heal allies. But as you can see here, we're doing damage instead, and will disrupt their targeting system. And again, bypasses their fluid armor and deals direct melee damage, which is very significant here because melee damage, I believe, is not coincided with energy damage. So it's really cool there. But again, as you can see, it will heal friendly targets when we switch over. I'll show you in a second. We do also have this ability. This ability, even in attack mode, I believe it doesn't do any damage, but it will heal you and get your energy regeneration up. And yeah, as you can see here, this will disrupt enemy fire control within range while in corruption mode, but it will also grant ally units half buffs in support mode, increasing your mobility and energy regen. So it does affect enemies, but it overall mostly affects your allies when you're not in corruption mode. And then our last ability is just swapping into a repair mode, and of course when we do bring out a repair or a repair striker here, so we can see that here, when we do deploy our drones on there, that will do some healing. We can also do our AoE healing in this section here and grant our allies some buffs here. So not only are we repairing, we're also increasing the mobilization and energy regen, and we can put more than one drone on them. And you see we have 2 on there at once. I believe that might be the max stack there is 2. Yeah, 2 on one enemy and 2 on an ally there. But you see it does significant and decent healing. This is a really cool class overall, very unique. Here's their stats though. As you see, they have very low HP, very low energy. They are not mobile at all, at least as far as how much they have. They also do have fluid armor, but it is very low as well. Now they do have some decent mobility as far as their speed goes, but as far as their energy, they do not have a ton. So they can move very fast, but they are limited on how much they can move quickly like that. Next up here we have the Welkin, and it's a heavy brawler. I see this one played quite a lot in matches so far. A lot of people really like this one, and it does have some really cool abilities. We first up here have our main attack, which is a basically heavy melee, and it will essentially let us lunge to an enemy, although when we hold it down there. So if we lunge to an actual enemy, so we'll pop down our good old Falcon here, we can see that we actually do lunge to an enemy, and we avoid all of their shield and just new HP damage. A lot of people like this class because you're avoiding their shield and at least avoiding their fluid armor. We also can do that charge up ability, and we basically do a decent AoE damage there. And that one is super fun to utilize, basically a warrior spin attack. We also do have a secondary attack here, so they will do some shield damage if you need to, and it is a decent one here. Now, this one will need to be manually reloaded. We will have a cooldown there, so it won't auto-regenerate, but we do have 6 bullets. They also do have this really fun and interactive ability. It's very unique to their class. When we press 1 here, this will place down a barrier here, and they cannot, and we cannot get outside of it. As you see, we actually do damage with them with drones inside too. They cannot move out. Nobody else can shoot them, so you basically get a free elimination there, so you don't have anybody taking your down or elimination, so you can kind of get that. It's called the dueling cube, and so it allows you to essentially duel the person in front of you, basically making it so that nobody else can hit them and nobody else can heal them or do anything, and they're all free reign there. So it's really nice to utilize. They do have some decent abilities here that can also help. They have a smoke screen that will do some damage here. Will also disrupt them a little bit. Will blind enemies and stagger them, forcing them to face you. But it also can be blocked by shields, and lingering smoke reduces energy and significantly weakens wrecked energy damage. They also do have a defense field here, which allows them to block some damage and does help overall. Again, interferences with smoke, blocking energy damage, greatly reducing direct energy damage, while also deploying a defense shield that will block long-range attacks. And if you do end some of these, you will actually get an early reduced cooldown. And it does apply to a lot of the mechs I have covered so far. And you will see they do have an assassination elimination, so we'll check that out here. Pretty cool, and a decently fun one to utilize. Here is the Welkin stats. They actually have some decent HP, 46,000, 48,000 energy, so they have a lot to move around with, and a good amount of fluid armor at 42,000. Mobility a little bit slower, but decent overall. Their fire control system, their weapon damage, very good also, and their stability. Next up here we have the Narukami, who yes, is a light sniper, so it is our second sniper rifle class. Again, has both a close range and a sniper attack here, so you can lock on and just shoot a basic attack. Although this will not always be accurate, as you can see, even though we locked down there, it did actually miss. That was quite weird. So depending on your range here, it might not lock on necessarily, but it is overall at least there. It's also doing both shield and HP damage. We can also zoom in. Now this is significant because depending on how long we are locked in here, the more damage we do. So you see that is actually dependent on basically your scope here, and is not dependent on how much you hold down. So it's dependent on how long you're scoped in. We'll actually get the charge rate, not depending on how much, or at least how long you hold. A lot of times it is depending if you hold down the trigger button, but this one is actually dependent on how long you were zoomed in for. So depending on what level you are here, if you go all the way to 300%, that will do a decent and significant damage. This class also has some pretty cool stuff here, where it will have a little bit of a decoy here. You can place down a drone that will also damage allies and will make you stealth for a second here. So you see it gives us a little decoy. Looks like we can place 2 at a time. Yeah, we can place 2 at a time and have those decoys up, and it also puts us into stealth mode basically, so that we cannot be seen. Now as soon as we do fire it, we'll place out of stealth. And actually I did figure out here, if we do shoot, they actually shoot from here, so they can actually do damage with you. This is kind of like a turret system, or essentially what you would have as a turret. They actually shoot with you, so very, very cool here. So they do actually do damage, and they basically will do a decent amount of damage on an enemy here when we do place those down. Now you can, again, you can have 2 of those up at a time, and it will place you in stealth, but as soon as we shoot, that will put you in, or at least take you out of stealth, but you go right back in. So you're kind of basically in stealth this whole time here. Very, very unique, actually very strong. 2 other things here. We do have, as we see, we're out of range here from our drones, but we do actually have a ability here where we can lock onto terrain. Now this will actually pull us up, and we are invis right here, so we're just chilling on this ledge here, and we can invis and we can scope in and do our attack, and we are essentially just kind of hanging out here where we can hang on the top. Now we can jump down and still keep the invis until we kind of move out of the area. There's also some really cool unique things with that too. So not only can we lock onto terrain, we can also pull ourselves to enemies here. So we can actually warp to them and put ourselves into invis. Do believe we do a little bit of damage there. So really cool overall. We can also manually put in our AoE invis. This class just has a ton of invis abilities here. We're basically putting ourselves invis as much as we can, and as soon as we get back into our AoE thing, although when we do attack we do come out of invis, but it puts us right back in. So we're basically can just hit here and we can move around, and that will put it on cooldown eventually, but it is pretty cool there. This is a very, very unique class. It might even be a little bit too strong, but it is super fun to use, and seems like it might be really, really good on the battlefield. It also seems like we probably don't have an animation here for an assassination. Yeah, looks like we have no animation for the assassination. Although, as you probably guessed, this class, yes, has the lowest health in the entire game. 28,000 for max HP. Has barely any mobility, but we do get that, or at least barely any energy, but we do have a ton of mobility with our grapple hook. 17,000 has the by far lowest energy. We also only have 20,000 fluid armor. So this class is very, very low and can get taken down very fast, but you see we have a ton of utilization there. We're basically invis, it seems almost infinitely. Decent mobility speed overall. We also have our fire control system. They have a lot of stats here with that, and then our stability. Next up we have Tricera, which is an ultra heavy defender. This is probably one of the most utilized classes I've seen in the playlist so far, or in some of the matches. I've seen this class basically every single time with someone playing it. Has some really cool abilities here. We'll check out their main and secondary attack, where we do have a Gatling gun, so let's have some decent fire right there, and some decent damage overall. We also have a secondary Gatling gun here, which actually is a little bit stronger overall, and can do some significant damage. Now you see it does not do any HP damage until the shield is down. Also, these ammos do not regenerate. You have to reload them manually. It will reload both of them, but as you see, our primary attack will have a faster reload than our secondary attack. Max capacity there is 300 and 240 respectively. Moving on though, we do have one pretty cool mechanic here, and this is what I see a lot of people utilizing. This basically makes them into a tank, is where we hit this ability here, and we're basically in this fortress mode. Now we cannot move, of course, we are basically locked in, but we are blocking attacks from every direction, and they basically take no damage. People really have to utilize their rockets in order to penetrate this shield. It really is quite strong overall. Again, you can also do your regular fire and your secondary, but you have access to both your other weapon systems here, as well as even your rocket system, so that can help too. And when our HP is low, as you see on the left there, we have a little bit of low HP, we can actually put down a drone that will heal us, and even when we hop out, the drones will still heal us, and they will still utilize their cooldown there. So we can actually hop into this shield, pop our health drone, and hop right back out. So we don't have to stay in this to actually use our health, or at least our heal drones. Now you won't be able to utilize those until you actually do lose health here, but you do see you get 2 or 3 of those rather in total. Again, you cannot utilize that until your health is low, so you can't just primary. Sometimes you might utilize that to like hop into a fight. You can't do that. You have to have lower HP than max in order to utilize those. Again, we have the rocketry system. It is a pretty baseline class here. We have the main and secondary attack, and that is about it. Their mobility is quite slow overall though, and they do use a significant amount of energy to move around. Now they do actually have an animation here for their assassination. Really cool one. This one is a ranged assassination, and it does a decent amount of animation here. So a very fun one. It is quite long. And we have their stats here. They have the most HP in the game, 70,000 for their max HP. They have a good amount of 35,000 energy, and their fluid armor around 30,000. So that is going to be a little bit dropped off there from the 45,000 we've seen a lot of the ultra heavies have. But 70,000 HP is insane. Again, their mobility is slower. They are a decently slower class. They don't have a ton of energy, so their mobility is going to be nerfed quite significantly. Their fire control system and their weapon tree. Next up here we have Falcon. This is a light attacker. We do have a primary and secondary attack here, of course, and we have the winged transform mode that we've seen, or the winged form mode that we've seen with other classes, at least one other class. So pretty cool there. Their main attack here can be shot without locking on. However, they do not auto-regenerate that, so you will have to randomly reload, but it is a 1-second reload, no matter what the ammo is or what ammo count you are. In order to use our secondary ability, we'll have to be locked on though, and it is a barrage. So it does a decent amount of AoE damage and some decent lock-on damage. Again, it's not going to penetrate their HP, it's only going to penetrate their shield. So they do good shield damage, but they cannot do any HP damage. They also do have what looks like a recon system here. So essentially, this will boost detection range, ignores terrain, and stealth. So that other class that we saw earlier that does stealth will continuously mark all nearby enemies and display them to friendly units. So this is very good for those stealth snipers that are going to have to be kind of countered, and essentially this will be a very good counter to that class. Anything that can go stealth, it will also help your allies in that case. And of course, this class does have the winged transformer mode, or winged transform mode. Now this one's very, very fast, and again, it is a little bit better with the kind of utilization there. We also do have some bombing here that we can do over the class as an energy weapon. We can also use our recon mode in this. We can use all of our attacks, and it doesn't have a lock-on system, or it looks like it's not going to be locked down with that. So you will have to be more precise with this overall, at least. Will not lock onto your enemies there. Again, it has the same shift ability here that we can utilize as the same spin though overall, and we'll drop out of our wing transformer system here. Now we can also not utilize our third ability unless we are in our winged form. So just do note that you cannot use that missile barrage unless you are in the winged form. But we do have an animation here. We do have a little nice assassination animation. This one is a little bit closer than others. Actually is a melee one, even though the champion is not melee at all. Still a really cool one overall and decently long. We do have Falcon here, who is a light attacker. Has pretty low HP, 26,000, not the lowest. Actually low energy rate for what is the utilization here with its winged transform system, but doesn't utilize a ton of it, so not bad there. We have the fluid armor at 28k. Mobility though is at 42, quite high for classes overall. Obviously it is a light attacker, and we have the fire control system as well as the weapon, and it has stability with it too. Last up here, we do have the class you start with, which is the Alysnes, and it is a decent class and decently fun. It has a lot to its kit overall, so it is a nice class and is decent to toy with. It has melee and ranged abilities that you can swap in and out of. You've probably seen that already. We do have some gameplay I can show you as well with this class. We can also charge up its ability, or I have to actually charge up it. So it is a little bit weird. We can't just shoot regularly and it will shoot some, or we can charge it up. And if we do charge, it will unleash a 30 shot with reduced accuracy. So when we do charge it, we'll actually do some decent AoE damage, or we can just spam trigger it and it will do some damage here. Overall, you see it does do reduced accuracy. So more than likely, you're probably not going to utilize that unless you're within shotgun range there. Otherwise, I wouldn't utilize that a ton. We do also have their melee ability, or melee mode here, where we can go into some melee attacks. This one is really fun to utilize. It has a 4 attack system here, so it will be 4 attacks in a row, with the 4th attack doing a nice charge attack there. You can see that one, and it is decent. They also do have a shield, and you can parry with this shield, so if you do get hit and you parry their attack, they will actually get staggered. That's a really, really fun one to utilize there, so not bad. You also do have a system here where you can launch a rocket, and that's a very cool one. Again, the rockets will help against shields, does a decent chunk of damage there. They also have this third ability here, and this third ability actually helps a ton in combat, where you can summon a airdrop to replenish your armor and weapon, and it also counters melee attacks, staggers attacks, provides a temporary force field against range attacks, and requires your post armor purge. So essentially, when this thing breaks, you will actually go into your post armor, and you can call this in, and it will help you at least get your armor back and will actually give you shield and stagger enemies. It is very, very cool, so you won't just get taken out with your first hit. When this thing actually does get taken out, you go into a post armor stage, and then you can pop that and go into your back into the stage. But it is a very cool utilization, so you do get like a second chance there, and does help a ton in combat. I've utilized it a ton, and I've stayed alive in that mode and able to kind of do some more damage. And again, the melee attack does evade all of their shield, which is nice. And they do have an assassination here, and it will be in melee. Very nice little combo there. Of course, we do have their HP, 34,000, energy at 43,000. Nice, high, decent energy there. Fluid armor is a little bit low since they are a medium class, and is low for mediums actually. 25,000 there. Mobility, 35. It's actually quite significantly low, but again, it is a medium class. We also look at the fire control system. The weapon, as you see, they have a ton of stats here for weapon, and they have a ton of stability. So it is a nice all-rounder class. It is a very good starter class, basically a jack of all trades. That should cover it for all of the classes. We do have stuff here like the weapons and mods we can eventually go into to enhance our abilities here or enhance our mechs, but that does cover the baseline of them, and overall at least the baseline of how they are set up. A decent roundup of their abilities overall, as well as what they kind of utilize. They are fun to go through all of them, check them out in training range, see what kind of class you would best be played with. Last up here, of course, you can actually wishlist this game and get a reward. So if you do wishlist, you can use my link down below. You will actually get the Pyrogenesis cap. Very cool here, nice little free reward. You can also, again, use my link to download the game, and it will bring you to the demo link, which that is the open beta. So if you do want to check it out, this game is completely free right now. It's an open beta. You should check it out. It's very fun. A nice, decent time to play right now. Everybody's just jumping in. Overall, I should have covered for today's video. Like, subscribe, and until the next one. Deuces.